Good evening and welcome to Artist Talk on Art, Monday, April 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm Alex Cohen, Programming Director of Artist Talk on Art. Tonight's dialogue is between curator Michael Klein and artist James Greco. Artist Talk on Art is the world's longest running art panel forum in art history. Founded in 1974, ATOA has held and recorded over 1,200 events in audio and video featuring more than 9,000 artists and other art professionals. All ATOA events are recorded, copyrighted, and then posted to our YouTube channel, Artist Talk on Art 2026. Please hold your questions or comments until the last part of our 90-minute event and remain muted until that time. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the participants. Michael Klein's expertise as a private art dealer and freelance independent curator for individuals, institutions, and art organizations. Today, Michael Klein Arts works with a diverse group of artists, estates, galleries, and nonprofit institutions providing management, curatorial, and other consulting services. At the same time, the company services institutional as well as private collectors with an eye to developing collections of emerging, mid-career, and established artists. The company also organizes traveling exhibitions both in the United States and abroad. James Greco is a New York-based artist with a multidisciplinary approach to his art practice, which encompasses paintings, sculptures, installation, performance, site-specific time-based work, collage, and drawing. His work is designed to be viewed not only as a singular object, but orchestrationally arranged like set designs to express a poetic personal narrative. His use of gesture, image, and materials exploration has developed into a body of work that is influenced by his own experience with life, death, love, beauty, decay, violence, and destruction. And now I'll hand it over to them.
Good evening, everybody. So I guess what I will do is begin the conversation. I discovered something that I had written about James in 2014 when we first met. So if you'll indulge me, I will read this. It's a couple of paragraphs, but it'll sort of set the ground for the conversations we're going to have and the questions that I'll ask about the work that he's been doing. I've been following his work for the last 10 years. I'm a huge fan. And I think he's one of the most creative and actually one of the most inventive artists I've met in a long, long time. And this was a newsletter that I'd sent out. I was doing a kind of monthly newsletter. I'm now switching and we'll start again a quarterly newsletter beginning this coming spring about activities and projects. For example, I'm working on a Sean Scully exhibition and I'm also working on a traveling sculpture exhibition. The title of the newsletter was Discoveries. From my desk on the Upper West Side and my little gallery in the Northern Catskills, I am finding and seeing works of art and meeting wonderful artists. Presented here, a group of three, a painter from the West Coast, a painter from Brooklyn, and a sculptor from Belgium. James, Mark, and John, how biblical a list is that? Came to my attention via the internet, that relatively new democratic and non-alcoholic and smoke-free space. This new place is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 52 weeks a year. My retreat is to hunker down with coffee and the laptop and my two canine pals, Sherman and Teddy, on the sofa. They snooze while I surf. Going through the pages of Facebook is like walking through a maze or being in a treasure hunt because you never know who or what you will find and where it might lead. A stockbroker would put these on buy lists. So do I. I like a good broker who knows his company values and directions. I do the same. Research about the works that I find, and then I have to see the works in the real life. And in the end, nothing has really changed other than the information is available in large quantities, but it requires a good eye to separate out what one finds and what one rejects. James Greco, living and working in Brooklyn, Greco is a native of Long Island. I was introduced to the work a few short weeks ago and then arranged a studio visit to see the works firsthand. At first, I was taken with the palette of pinks, grays, and yellows. Next, his compositions reminded me of the work of the English painter Frank Auerbach, an abstract painter in his own right, but someone also engaged with a visible world. I was also struck by the conflict evidenced in the paintings, a struggle or tug of war between an underlying structure that is juxtaposition to areas of pure paint and energy. Greco is looking at and thinking about the larger history of painting. The colors would be those used by Sienese painters in the 13th century, and the squarish format reminds one of the expansive and explosive canvases of such painters as Michael Goldberg and Alfred Leslie. But unlike these older abstract expressionists, Greco is engaged with creating within each painting as a place to be a place where something is happening in both the space and the light. There's a diligence to his work and to his commitment to the painting as a means of not merely a practice, but as a means to communicate with the viewer, stories, episodes, or a fragment or of a conversation that might catch walking down the street. So, so let me ask you, James, I wrote that, and what do you think?
Well, at that time you were talking about like a body of work that I was
For those
doing.
abstract paintings,
Yeah.
exactly, because that, yeah,
And
exactly.
and at
But
that
I think there's some things, I think the dialogue that you create in the paintings, whether it's abstract or figurative, I think it's very much part and parcel of what's going on. So go ahead.
well, when I did those paintings at that time, I was trying to do portraits of abstractions. I was literally trying to create um, a portrait of an abstract painting that was painted in the same sort of way. And at the time, all four corners of the paintings were left untouched so that the
Right, exactly, right. Yeah.
focus of the paintings went to the center. But they were also based around there was a lot of black in the center of them. So what I was trying to do was initially starting the paintings with sort of this. I have a sort of an adversity to sentimentality in painting.
Right,
So I started these paintings with this sort of very sentimental, romantic sort of palette scheme. And then when it got to a point where it just became absolutely nauseating, I would go in with huge swaths of black
right,
and start to destroy a lot of the sentimentality. And because
right,
they were done in water-based paints, I had like a lot of water and a trough that would catch all the water, and I would wash the paintings down. And as I was trying to land the black swath of paint over the sentimental sort of romantic background, both would start to disintegrate at the same time. So
right,
the
right,
background would start disintegrating. And so the black, the frontal part of the painting and the background of the painting would start to like try to play catch up with each other. As the
right.
background was disappearing, the black would sort of try to chase it
Do
until
you
the
have a painting? Do you have a painting from that period that we could put up on the screen, just so that everybody can see what we're
I
talking about?
don't because it's so old.
It's
I
so
don't
old.
have,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
unfortunately. But
Okay.
but that was
Um,
sort of the premise of those particular works.
right. So what can we put up the first image that you sent in, and we can begin to start talking about the more recent work and what you're working on now?
Sure, you want to put something up?
Yeah, you sent in some images, correct? So we should be able to pull one up.
The website's there too, so whatever I can't choose really, I don't have access to it. Maybe
Okay.
Natalie
You can share
can.
the website. I can share it right now.
Yeah, and we can just you can actually just pull up the first image on the website
Okay.
if that's
Just give me
easier.
one second. Yeah, 1 second. Okay. Um,
Scroll down. So yeah, we could talk about that first image.
Yeah, let's talk about that first group. No, if you could scroll back up a little
Scroll
bit and
back up to
I'm
that
still
first.
here.
this is, I mean, we've now
Yeah.
shifted away from painting. We'll come back to painting. I mean, I think one of the interesting things for me about your work, James, is you have the facility of switching from making paintings to doing these kind of installation pieces. And I find them both amazing and interesting. And it's also in my head as a historian, I see a connection to arte povera and what was happening in the 50s and 60s with the Italian artists, which is rare in American artists that have that kind of freedom of just inventing and reinventing. So can you describe can you give us a title and describe a little bit of the piece?
I forget what the title of this piece is called.
Why do artists always forget their titles? I mean, it's like, okay,
Um, I could find it very easily,
don't worry
but
about it. Don't worry about it.
but
But
these
talk
are
about,
basically so basically these are all images that I've So the first image is from a statue that's in the Brooklyn Museum that I took with my
On the
iPhone.
left. The
Yeah.
left image, yeah. Okay.
And then the second image with the tattooed back, that's an image that I screenshot directly from Instagram. And then the third one was a photograph that I took off of um, some kind of signage or something that I took. So I take them and then I take these photographs. I have them on my iPhone. And then I basically went to the public library and I had these printed out on these, the library prints them out very cheaply for me.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're not like these high quality images. They're sort of
Right.
like, and then, I just like to collect.
Are they on paper or photographic paper?
They're on paper. They're not photographic paper.
Oh,
They're just
wow. Okay.
very cheap sort of poster
Right. Sure. Yeah.
paper. And then I bring them back to the studio and I really like the dialogue of the three sort of like, these images of like the necklace with the gun on it. It's just kind of like, rather than like you'd see a gold chain with the crucifix, this has like a machine gun. And
Right.
just the bravery and irreverence of like a woman that would tattoo her back in that way.
Right.
It's very violent, but like, there's obviously an existentialist story with that person that would, you know, tattoo themselves in that way. And then the statue of just like, there's this beautiful, figure, this woman whose hands are bound, and the whole thing just sort of like talks about suffering and death and violence, just sort of the themes that have always continued to come up in my work. And then, I bring them back to the studio and very unceremoniously, I just tape them to the wall. And then I love the idea of like black lights. I always think about sort of painting lamps, which I absolutely love. I love these lamps that are attached to painting frames, from the old school, like a Courbet
Did you
painting.
ever, can I interrupt you for a second? I don't know if you know the artist Paul Tech.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, well, Paul did a whole series of these small paintings where he put a little lamp above the painting in that old sort of, early
Yeah.
20th century way. In fact, when he had the big retrospective of Whitney, I don't know, 20 years ago, there was a room just of these small paintings. It was quite wonderful. So the lights that are below here, are they black lights or are they fluorescent lights? What kind of lights are they?
Those happen to be black lights, and
Okay.
and I basically inverted from the idea of like, most painting lights are above a painting shining down. These are black lights absorbing and they're beneath. And then, in the left-hand corner, just I make these balls out of concrete that I'll just roll into the frame. And then I take a photograph of it like this, which I can post digitally online or whatever. And ultimately, that's the piece. The piece is the photograph of these photographs on my wall. So
Oh wow. Okay.
those
I did
images,
not realize that. So basically, as a quote unquote salesman, if I was selling the piece, I would be selling the large image of all of it together. In
in
other words,
my mind,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I have those images, but they're really just about the setup.
Right. Right.
And
Right. Right. Right.
so, so it becomes,
So the photograph on paper, the lighting and the balls, the floor, the wall, all become kind of the model. And then what you have to carry away and frame with that entire image. I didn't realize that. That's interesting.
yes, because
Yeah.
oftentimes I'll do setups like these and
Right.
the art itself won't work, but the
Right.
picture will.
Right. 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 Right.
So because
Interesting.
I destroy a lot of work
Yeah,
because
because you're always going through things. I know that from
I'm
being in
going
the
through things, and
studio. Yeah.
I also have this, my biggest problem as an artist is accumulation.
Right.
So to do away with the accumulation problem is I set things up in my studio that I can ultimately throw the elements away, because at the end of the day, the
Very
photo,
interesting. Interesting.
it's like
I had not
almost like,
known that. Yeah.
I think of it almost in terms of like an Andy Goldsworthy or like a Richard Long,
Right. Sure. Oh,
where
yeah.
like
Absolutely.
that
Sure. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Richard Long would walk 60 miles and he would place a stone
Right.
every every 40 feet, and then
Right.
but you don't get to be participatory in that, and
No.
you don't even know if it actually happened. You just have this
Right.
beautiful photograph
Right.
that documents the end of the piece. Or like an
Right.
Andy Goldsworthy, right? You have a photograph
Right.
of like,
Right.
you know color transcending leaves, but you weren't there to experience it or get to see it. The photograph is what's left.
Right.
So is it about photography or is it about sculpture? So I like that
Well,
idea.
it's about everything. I mean, it's about, this accumulation of these ideas, visual ideas that get put together, and the final product is the image that you then frame and hang. Um,
Right.
and that's something I didn't I it's interesting. Okay, I did not know that. That's great. Huh.
And it's
Okay.
also a way for me to be like, everything at the end of the day ends up being these photographs. Even the paintings will end up just being like
Right,
a
right,
photo,
right, right, right.
which I can do whatever with,
Can we
you know.
scroll down and can we go to the next series of
Sure.
images? Yeah, okay. But here on the left, you have a classic kind of assemblage that you've made. This is some
Right.
animals
Yeah.
on a wooden pedestal. And then on
So
the right, all right, talk about dust, please.
yeah, so I found this reindeer that somebody was throwing away after Christmas, and I grabbed it because it immediately reminded me of Bruce Nauman. So I took that back to the studio, and then I had this root that I had dug up from the ground, and I collect these elements, and then I start to put them together to see if they can work. And so I created that. I created this piece, and then I was like, oh, it's missing something. So I drilled a hole in the deer's ass, and I put feathers, these feathers coming out of the back, and then I put a softball at the bottom
Right.
just to, I'm taking all these elements that sort of come to me, like a lot of the objects and stuff come to me just like through
Right.
my course of my daily life, like,
Right.
through living, like, I find things in the garbage side of the road, things like that. Certain things speak to me and I'll take them. I don't know what they're going to be for, but then I'll arrange them later on for a piece. And so I assembled this piece, took the photograph, it was done. Most of the elements got thrown away.
So the
Um,
piece doesn't exist anymore.
no, the piece does not exist anymore.
Okay. So
Most of the
yeah,
installations, the pieces don't exist.
don't exist. Okay.
After I capture it the way I want to capture it, it gets thrown out.
It gets moved, or you reuse it somewhere else, or it gets tossed out. Okay.
Yeah, I'll do like maybe a multiple variations of certain pieces, but then once it clicks, it
Right.
works photograph
Right.
that communicates the idea or
Right.
or the action, then it's basically done.
Right.
And then on the, to the right, those smiley faces, um, I had these huge, my neighbor had like these two 4x4 sheets of cardboard from a refrigerator that she purchased, and I took them back, and I was like, oh, I want to do a double happiness. I was thinking about, uh, you know, this, this Chinese restaurant called Double Happiness, and I was like, oh, let me just do these two smiley faces that are,
Right.
and then I juxtaposed them on the website next to this piece, and I was like, oh, I like the way that feels. So now
Right.
it's like, now I'm creating a dialogue and a narrative on my website as well as having these
Right.
disparate
Right.
objects. So it's like it's constantly morphing and being brought together to sort of create like a story,
Right.
some
Sure.
kind of narrative, a storyline.
Right. So let's scroll some more. Yes.
FYI, Audrey Collins is putting the titles of all your pieces up in the
No,
chat.
yes, exactly in the
Oh,
chat.
great. Thank
Yeah,
you,
so we can
Audrey.
see this. Can you, yeah, let's talk about this piece because I'm fascinated with this, the tree limbs and the objects.
So this is basically about like, so there's two things that were coming to my mind when I was doing this piece is one is Janis Kanellis or Janis Kanellis did this piece a long time ago with these two beams leaning into the corner of the wall with these bells hanging,
Right,
which I just think is just like one of the most beautiful pieces ever made. And then when I vacation down in Florida, they have these huge osprey sort of man-made nests. They have these poles, and there's like a
right,
platform on top of the pole, and
right. And then they said,
the
right,
ospreys
right,
make these nests. And I just love the idea of these perches and the idea of
right,
into a corner. And I was like also fascinated with the idea of litter and things like left outside or just like man-made objects that are discarded quite often. And then
Right,
the idea of nature growing up and like pushing them up and like,
right,
because if left untouched, like nature will like lift it up. Like when you see like a tree, like a fence growing into a tree,
right.
like a tree grows around and it looks like the
Sure.
fence inside. So
Yeah.
I had these objects. I grabbed these two tires from somewhere. The ladder is like I had at my house, and this chair I
So
had.
let me interrupt you now because I'm very curious because I'm learning something that I didn't realize before. I'm inviting you to an exhibition. I want you to create, I want to show something. Would you recreate this for the exhibition, or would we show the photograph of this installation?
I would prefer to show the photograph of it.
Really?
I would prefer to show the photograph of it and then create a whole new piece on the floor of something
Why?
completely different based on the environment of where the show is.
I see. Okay. All right.
So, like, if you said, James, I want to have a show with you, but I want to include this piece, I would have a photograph of that, put it on the wall, and then maybe I'd go out and find two huge armoires and cover them in duct tape and just put them in the middle of the gallery. And then
I
that
see.
photograph would be on the wall.
Right. Okay. All
Like,
right.
I prefer to move in that way than to just exhibit these. They're like one time shots. They're not really products or.
Well, there was a show that I curated many years ago called Tableau, and this reminds me a little bit of the work of Mac Adams, who would also create these particular sets, and then he would photograph them. And the set wasn't available; it was the photograph of the set is what we eventually showed.
Right.
And this is something that I didn't realize because I'm working, thinking, okay, these are installations, and you'll take it, you'll show it, you'll photograph it, you'll put it together, but you'll keep all the parts, and then we could recreate it someplace else. But in fact, that's not the case at all. What's in fact is that this is a tableau and it's done, and you move on to the next one, and this is not, you don't keep the parts. What remains is the photograph of the tableau. Okay.
Exactly. I mean, I would recreate a version of that and maybe,
Or you might do something different, but the point is that and then photograph that. But it's just that
yeah,
it's not like you're putting this away somewhere for safekeeping so that
no,
eventually it can be sold in some situation or shown
no,
in some situation. Okay.
not at all. Like
Interesting.
if you wanted to exhibit, like if you like this piece, I would say, let me do this with 25 branches holding up 25
Right,
tires.
right. No,
You know,
you'd create a version of this, or you'd
I
create
create a
some sort of,
version. Yeah.
exactly. It's
I
very,
don't keep the elements.
yeah.
I don't keep the
Okay.
elements.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah, because I would assume after all these years, I mean, your garage would be, chock-a-block full of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
And I make too much work and I like to
right,
experiment too
exactly,
much to
exactly.
hold on to
But
all these.
but it also now I have much better idea that I hadn't before because I was looking at more as kind of traditional installation, and it is and it's not because the final object is the photograph. And then
Right.
have you shown any of these photographs in an exhibition yet?
I have not.
Because my next question would be, what size would they be? I mean, 8 by 10 would seem that it wouldn't be appropriate. You'd want to make larger scale photographs, particularly because just to give a sense of scale, space, what have you.
They
So,
would be huge. I mean, I haven't had um, the opportunity to print them or have
well,
them.
now you and I have to talk about that because I'm really interested.
And I would want them framed and I would want to do a
Oh,
whole
no, no,
thing.
no, absolutely. No,
You
no, I
know,
completely understand that. I just think this is a whole new another aspect that I hadn't understood before. And one of the great things about my job, and I've always enjoyed, is the goddamn learning experience. I mean, I don't expect to know everything, and every time, working with an artist, meeting an artist, talking with an artist, you just learn new things and understand different things. And now I have another understanding about the work that I hadn't before. So let's keep scrolling. By the way, I don't know, Alex, were there images that he specifically sent in color that you may want to show? I don't know. I'm just
I can
suggesting.
take a look, but it was not, this is not normally what we do, so I'd have to,
Oh,
find
no,
this
no, don't
in
worry
here.
about it. Okay, no, no, we can continue. Let's scroll. So um Let's see if we
Yeah,
can
keep
find
scrolling.
something.
Maybe we could
Keep
just,
scrolling. Let's see something like that. Yeah, let's keep
Michael,
going.
you can stop on something that you want to
Yeah,
talk
yeah, yeah,
about.
yeah. No, absolutely. There's another tree piece that I love so much with the wheels. Let's keep scrolling, please. All right, let's stop here because this is a whole new body of paintings, which I think is very interesting. And I asked you about them the other day because they are, in a word, in many ways horrific. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got, this scene on the left where a woman is being devoured by some kind of creature. You have another creature struggling on the right with a tree. Talk about these. And one other point I want to make to everybody who's listening, what I find fascinating about James is that he can switch from painting to sculpture to installation, et cetera, et cetera. And um, I think it's a rare gift. Go ahead.
So these are the
Okay.
latest work that I've done. These are
Yeah,
the latest paintings,
right.
part of the series. And it had been in the back of my mind. I wanted to do some real large scale oil paintings that I had, on some really nice stretchables. Usually I work with a lot of, trash and stuff that's, sort of very disposable so I can feel very free. I've always been kind of like hesitant to spend a lot of money on making art, but I was like, you know what, I want to do a series of these paintings, so let me invest a little bit of money into it and with some really nice oils and all this other stuff. So and I'm drawing all the time, and I have a tendency to draw sort of these horrific sort of scenes. And I just kept thinking about how I see a lot of boutique art. There's a lot of this safe, intellectual, academic sort of like, you know, gentle touch, spatial, ethereal, like very just like very boring intellectual art that feels very safe to buy. And I love the art world loves safe. They like a little bit of danger, but not too much. And, I just kept thinking to myself, man, I really want to see something absolutely volatile that no one would put above their couch. Like no one would like, this would be a very hard sell. And I was like, I wanted to like really immerse myself in something just like really intense and psychological and so I just started painting these and went in with very loose sketches of kind of like what I wanted to do. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to pull these images out and I'm going to paint them to the best of my ability, in terms of like the way that I sort of draw cartoony. And
But why this imagery? What you would talk to me the other day about the imagery. You talked about, I mean, I think very much relates to the time we're living in.
yeah, they're about, there's like these and some of the ones beneath it, they're sort of the figures are sort of both male and female. They all, they all have these sort of masks of these skulls. They're anthropomorphic, they're hermaphrodites, they're stabbing each other. Not these two, but if you
Can
scroll
we
down,
scroll down to the next one,
you
please?
scroll, yeah, and then, you know, and you can even scroll down again, maybe to another, there's these sort of like they're stabbing each other, they're like they're stabbing them, they're all about like completely in a state of struggle between life and death, self-inflicted wounds, perversity. They're peeing, they're bleeding, they're like they're you know they're dead, but they're alive. They're anthropomorphic. They're like they're political. They're psychological. There's mushrooms. It's there's sort of these nightmares, these sort of demons that just kind of like I feel like I'm just sort of exorcising out of me. Um, and they
Huh.
feel very socially relevant. They feel like very like today with access to like, just everything on the computer on online and stuff. It's just,
Can we scroll up again just to the other two? I want to look at them with you one more time.
in this
I mean, there's
15,
something extra. I mean, the one I have to be honest with you, the one on the right I really like. I mean, there's something very Picasso-like about it. There is a kind of I mean, the drama here and there is the mythology here. I mean, there's a history here. and they seem to have some, and also the relevance to the sort of climate we're living in, which is kind of horrific, where we're stabbing ourselves to death.
Yeah. And they're also speaking about painting, they're killing themselves, like killing your own heroes, like killing painting, killing imagery, killing the figure, killing, art. They're sort of
No,
like
I
self.
really, I really, I really, really like the one on the right a lot. I mean, anyway, no, I think they're very interesting. I mean, there's a perversity to them, but I really like that. And
And they're big, they're like
yeah, what are the size?
they're
And these are on canvas?
yeah, they're 60 by 48.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
They're all
they're
on,
big. Great.
and there's 15 paintings in this series, but there's not that I don't have them all up on my website.
Right, right, right. Okay, we
And
can
they're in
continue.
these landscapes. They're in these landscapes. It's sort of a dreamscape. I kind of think of myself as someone on a path walking past these. They're sort of not interested in the viewer. This would be happening regardless whether or not the viewer was present. So it's not a personal attack on the person viewing this. This would be happening whether or not the viewer was there.
Right,
So, it's not an
right,
affront. I'm not trying to
right.
be volatile towards the
No,
viewer.
I understand. Yeah,
This is
interesting.
happening despite the viewer.
Right.
Maybe it's happening in your subconscious, maybe it's happening in mine, maybe it's
Yeah, it's
just a,
like it could be a bad dream or a bad
yeah, it
image.
could just
Yeah,
be a bad dream.
right.
But
Can we scroll down again,
I
please?
like the idea of the weight of them
Right.
as a visual story.
Now on the right, you have another wall installation,
Yeah,
which
so I'm
again,
always yeah, so I'm always drawing, and I do drawings of just quick ideas of things that come to me. I'm constantly doing like small works on paper and stuff, and then I just toss them to the side, and then occasionally I'll just grab a bunch of push pins and I'll start arranging, and then I'll make an object. Like I made that gun out of wood, and I was like, oh, I'm going to hang this with chains with the drawings, and then I'll move the drawings around. I'll do a vertical version, a horizontal. I'll take
right,
some out. I'll add some until it's like
right.
it feels like a beautiful sort of photograph with like an interesting idea, something that feels like my mind, like a visual representation of the way my mind works visually,
Right, right.
and you know like in those drawings, like those palm trees. It's like I just love to draw palm trees sometimes, so I just do it. But as the drawings themselves, they're useless. They don't mean anything. And I was like, oh, I do these ribbons with these like sayings in them and stuff. So everything's a fragment until it becomes part of a larger whole. So I feel
That's
like
a very
everything,
interesting point. Everything is a fragment until it becomes part of a larger whole. Okay.
they're like, I feel like I'm a writer. Like all my work feels more literary to me, and it's like everything
Right,
is a word that can be
right,
used in a sentence, then can be
right,
used in a paragraph, that can be used
right,
in, and it just keeps going on.
right.
And you could scroll down, maybe we can.
Yeah. Okay. And then what happens is you suddenly switch. It's like you
These
switch
are just
view.
well, these came prior to the two we just looked at, but
Okay.
these were I wanted to do these really large geometric abstracts on paper.
Right,
Um, and basically it's brown paper that I glue together with wallpaper paste. I make
right,
these huge panels,
right,
and then I just go into it with paint, and
right,
the colors come from specific things that are happening in my studio, colors that keep repeating themselves. So I just make these compositions, and then the middle lines in the inside are these feathers, these
huh,
turkey feathers that I find like around my neighborhood and at my house. There's all these feathers that sort of always wind up being on my lawn. And then I just created like a circular shape in the middle. And
right.
it's just a beautiful idea to me about the history of sort of minimalist painting and sort of these feathers on top. And just like it flies around and around this idea. It's just a very simple, it's just basically like a haiku or like a short love letter to art history, to just minimalist painting, which I
But
love.
but the panels now, once you've done them and photographed them, they no longer exist.
Those might be rolled up somewhere,
Okay. All right.
but perhaps not either.
Okay. Okay.
But
Right.
I might return to compositions like this again,
Right.
when
There's no
things start
such
to
thing as
feel,
American painting. I love that title.
yeah.
Yeah.
We could scroll down, see what's next. I don't even know what's.
Oh, more the
This is the same idea, more of
right.
this. The one on the panel, the right on these the picture on the right is just the wallpapered paper
Right.
with no pigment.
Right.
And then there's just like there's some of these concrete balls on it, some black chain, just trying to create these, the one on the left feels like a sort of a Clifford still, an homage to still, you
Huh.
know, with less information. And the one on the right to me is like a kind
Is
of,
that a light bulb that's in there, or I can't
yeah,
tell?
they're two light bulbs.
Wow.
So, and then the one on the right is sort of like these chains with
Right.
no image on it, holding, and the chains are holding up rocks, you
Right.
know. So it's just like the weight of painting, the weight, these black paintings on the left with this light, like it's like represents a little bit of hope, but also, this ominous sort of no representation, non-representational painting, like just void type stuff. It also feel the one on the right feels like a little bit like a Cornell, you know, just things that are, feel.
I love that title. Loretta Swit and Joyce DeWitt through the eyes of Saul DeWitt. Yeah.
So I just played with the names and, you
Sure.
know,
Very
um,
nice. I like them. I like these a lot. I hadn't seen these before.
I love working on paper, large scale paper, and I can make huge paintings and make huge artworks with
Right.
paper because I just take brown craft paper and I start ripping it and tearing it and putting it together, and they make them like paper constructions, and I just wallpaper paste them all together, and I just start going.
Nice. Can we scroll down more? Thanks. Oh, here we are again.
So these are on newspaper. So what I do is I tape the newspaper together, usually the food section where they have all the coupons and stuff.
Huh.
And then I painted over everything around the tape black. And then I said, I want to paint these sort of like tattoo image, sort of like these like Minotaur, sort of Grim Reaper. These things make me laugh too. I was also watching a lot of Viking stuff at this time on TV. I was watching these Viking series, which I absolutely loved. And then
Huh.
after I did the drawings, I was like, it's not quite enough. I need it to be a little bit more. And I was like, I had the branches sort of left over from the previous piece, and I just made like these upside down crosses, and I just screwed them right through the newspaper into the wall. And I was like, yeah, this feels great. Like, made me laugh. It's like it's kind of, it's kind of heavy. It feels intense. It feels a little dangerous. And I like that. It's like,
Hey, so James, let me ask you a question then, from a curatorial perspective. I'm going to offer you a show. Do you do a variety of works? Do we select things thematically? Let's say we will focus only on, or would somebody, how would you feel if somebody says, no, I only want to show the abstract paintings, or I only want to show these figurative paintings? How do you feel about that as opposed to a kind of a whole kind of,
that's fine. That's fine. But
you're not opposed to that? No,
no,
I'm
no,
just trying to understand what would be the way to present all of this. Would you do it in sections?
well, I
I'm
think
not sure I'm
I
articulating it as clear enough, but thematically, would you sort of say, no, I want to do the installations and no, I want to do the paintings, and how do
well,
you feel about
I think it's a lot to ask of people to understand everything that I'm doing and the different ways that I move.
that?
It's a
Right,
big ask. So
right,
I don't expect to do that. But, if I have somebody, if somebody was to say, I trust you as an artist, here's the space.
right,
The space is going to dictate a lot of what I do.
right,
So for instance, it's, if there was a main room and a back room, it's like, I would love to like, maybe one room gets filled with tires and feathers, and then maybe the back room has like two of these newspaper pieces in it,
Right.
or
Sure.
or maybe one room full of photographs, and then in the back there's just like, drawings I do on the wall with dirty tires, or it would be something sparse. It wouldn't be too overwhelming, but
Right.
my dream is
Right.
always, or my desire is always to create something of a larger narrative than just like, here's some paintings, here's some, that's kind of bores me,
Right.
you
So
know.
you would like, yeah. So it's really a kind of a whole big,
Yeah, I would love to just at least combine two elements.
right. Sure. Okay.
That would be
Right.
nice.
Right.
But it's a big ask, and I don't really expect, you know,
Well, I don't see why not. I
public
mean, other
views.
artists have, I mean, again, I've done two shows with Paul Tech, and there's an expanse of installation and paintings, and I mean, it was not a problem to work on all of that, and we did
Yeah, I
that.
mean
We did that
I mean,
quite well.
I mean, he's one of the reasons why I love to work on newspaper, because
Right.
the divers are, you
Right.
know, just
Right.
these beautiful, beautiful paintings on paper,
Right.
on newspaper.
Right. Yeah. No, they are great pieces.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love his sculpture work as well, but he has
Well,
such a
the sad part of it, Paul and I met. God, this goes back in before he died in '89, and we got to know each other kind of in the early '80s. Um, and a number of the pieces that uh, he had in storage, he could no longer afford the storage, so he threw them away, which is one of the
oh,
great tragedies. I mean, I couldn't believe when he told me that. I was just completely, totally shocked. But that was one of the problems, and unfortunately, it happens to a lot of artists. Can we
yeah,
scroll a little bit more?
sure. I don't know who's doing.
Well, let's keep going. Let's keep
Keep
going.
going. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about this guy.
Um, at the supermarket by my house here, there was a truck had run over this shopping cart, and it was absolutely mangled. And I had such empathy for it, and I thought it was just, you know, so beautiful in the way it was sort of, it just felt so uh you know it was like dystopian. It was so apocalyptic. There was something so just tragic about it. And so I brought it back to my studio, and I was like, what am I going to do with this thing? And I did a couple of different configurations with, so I was once again doing a setup for the photograph, doing
Right.
install. So, again, I got a chunk of wood. And all of this stuff feels like a performance to me, because while I'm trying to figure out a composition or
Mm-hmm.
a way to write a poem with these
Mm-hmm.
objects, there's a lot going on. Like, I'm dragging in, like, I had to find this concrete, and then I had the leaves from outside, and then I crushed a bunch of concrete to create that concrete dust on the ground.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
these are almost remnants of performances. There's a lot of, I see them as performances, and then there's these remnants of the performance, and it's all happening in the middle of my studio floor. And then
Right.
and then after I do a few different compositions, which I have another one with this particular shopping cart later on in the website. um, I took the shopping cart back to the supermarket, and I cleaned the studio, and on to the next on to the
Well,
next
this is
piece.
a kind of memento to the person who always leaves the shopping cart next to the car and never,
Right.
never returns it. So it's a kind of a vagabond.
And
Um,
once again, it's got these very formal sculptural things
oh
where there's
God,
like,
yes, absolutely. Which is what I
you know,
find, how you take the ordinary and make it completely abstract is one of the things I've always enjoyed about these pieces.
and everything is about drawing.
Right.
If you notice, there's a it's drawing in space. There's
Right.
drawing elements, like, the linear drawn, line elements of the
Well, you
shopping
got the
cart.
lines of the
There's
outside, the structure of
circles.
the card. You've got the grid of the card, and then you've got all that dust around at the base. No, it's very much
And
like a
got the
drawing.
sort of I thought really interesting was like the sort of the plumb bob action of the child's seat belt for the for the cart, and it's just like,
Right.
showing a level, a vertical line.
Right. Okay.
And it just works for me. Sometimes they don't work, but sometimes they do. I fell in love with this. I was like, this is
So a question. So you got the idea, you saw the cart. How, from beginning to end, a few days, a few hours, a week, a month, how long?
um this particular piece was probably just a few hours.
And do you work on a number of pieces at once, or do you just get an idea for one piece and then focus on that?
I don't really get ideas for pieces, you know.
Well,
I
you
also,
know, I mean, you have a reaction to something and then you just start working on it. But do you
yeah.
have, I mean, but will you be working on multiple things at the same time, or you just stay focused on one idea?
Um, I'm pretty focused on one idea at a time.
Okay. All right.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty scattered, but I'm not
Right.
really that chaotic.
Right.
I get pretty focused on what I'm doing.
Right.
I just allow myself to be, you know, diverse,
Yeah.
you know.
You know what I would love to show everybody, because it's now 8 o'clock. I would like them to see the book. Did a book of all of these pieces, which I have a copy, and I know he has them available. And I just would like, do you have one handy? You could just show it up on the screen.
I've got this is a book of I do books all the time as well. I do books of paintings and of sculptures and stuff, but this particular book is of the installations, of a lot of installation stuff that I do.
That's the one you sent me, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, I make books, but if somebody wants one, they can reach out to me on my website and I can make one
I
and
would
send.
highly recommend it. I think it's amazing. The only I had a criticism, which is that I thought he should have one little title page with an introduction written by somebody. Hello, just to sort of, introduce the ideas on the work.
Yeah. It's a great idea. I should do that.
Well, actually, what I should give you is that first thing I read earlier, Discoveries. I mean, I could expand on it because I actually like it, and I'm always interested to see, going back 10 years to look at something and go, well, this makes a lot of sense. It still works. Anyway, can
Right.
we keep scrolling? Doug, how are we on time and how are we on, questions? I don't know where it's 8 o'clock now. We've been talking for 45
Well,
minutes.
I think you're doing fine. What
Okay.
I would suggest, though, is you do reserve some time for comments
Okay.
and
So I'm just,
questions.
whenever you think it's an appropriate
So, since
moment,
it is 8 o'clock, maybe
maybe
another
tell
5 minutes, let's say, of
Okay,
chatting, and
great,
then
super. Yeah,
and
yeah.
then go to
Okay.
the
Okay, go to
re-
questions. Great,
mhm.
super comments, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
So should I stop screen sharing?
No, no, no. We're going to continue to scroll through this because there are more images. Keep going.
You
So
could
there's one.
scroll, and if you want to stop on something, we can, but
Yeah.
keep going.
Keep going. Keep going. Keep going.
Yep. Keep going.
Here, let's stop here because just because it's again, this is. I mean, after a while, you begin to see your characteristics, if you will, the paper, the paint, the found, branches, the light. I mean, all of these elements really become part of this ultimate vision. I mean, to me, this looks like what it's like here in the middle of a rainstorm. Uh,
Right.
you know what I mean? There's a kind of weather, there's the light that's always in the distance someplace. My neighbors, no matter what happens through the woods, winter, summer, fall, they have an outdoor light on their house, which I can see from my house. I can't see anything else, and I'm surrounded by woods. But that's what that reminds me of. And I was wondering, talk a little bit about that, your experience making this.
Do you remember the little studio on Thompson of Sumi E, the Koho Yamamoto? She had a Japanese brush painting class she taught in
No,
for
I don't. I didn't. No, I don't. No.
she was a she was really pretty fantastic. She taught Sumi E painting. And I
Uh-huh.
studied with her for a while. So
Oh, wow.
um so I've always loved Sumi E painting,
Right.
and I love the guitar movement. And
Right.
so, you know, occasionally, like, I just have to unleash in that way.
Right.
So I'll create my own ink, um, and I put panels together, and I'll just, paint sort of like in this explosive way, and then hang up the panels, and then I'll do things like add lights or,
Hmm.
like this. I do this type of stuff a lot now on newspaper
Right.
because I'm really fascinated with this idea of like, do you remember how like de Kooning used to put newspaper over his paintings to
Right.
keep them
Yeah.
wet? But then he
Right.
would peel the painting off, the
Exactly. And he
newspaper
would
off,
put,
and
then
he'd
he
put
would
them on
use it
the,
and he would print, almost print with the newspaper onto
yeah.
another canvas.
But
Exactly.
he
Yeah.
but he would do that to keep his paintings wet, and then he would take the newspaper off, and he would have, these people would come over his studio, and they would like be
Right.
like, "Can I have this piece of newspaper? Can I have this piece?" And
Right. Right.
they were like nothing, and he would get
Right.
really frustrated that people would take these newspapers as if they were
Right.
something because they were just refuse to him. So
Right.
I kind of do that now on newspaper
Right.
in a much more sort of, sort of irreverent way.
Hmm.
But this was just a way for me to just draw and just
Does
have
this
more.
still exist or did you tear it apart when it was done?
I'm sure it's gone. I'm
Okay.
sure. Yeah. But these are things that I can do again quite easily. You know,
Right.
I would love to do something like this 12-foot long,
Oh,
you
I'd
know,
love this I would love if I
with
had a wall
multiple
big enough,
light
I would love this
sources.
in my house. I absolutely adore this.
I'd
Absolutely
love to
adore it.
have a
It also
chandelier on
harks
the
back to
floor.
those the early paintings that we were talking that I started off talking about, which we didn't see, but those early abstractions. I mean, there's very much all that gesture is very much in there.
Right.
Very nice. I like this a lot.
You
Can
know,
we
I
keep
would love to do this 12 feet long and like have a chandelier on the floor, like broken in front of it with like, you know, maybe multiple branches or,
right?
y- you know, it would take form depending upon the space.
Right. Okay. Can we keep strolling a little bit more? Uh, let's see now. I'm just trying to see. Yeah, here we are. This is one of my favorite pieces. I love this piece. No, with the wheels. There's one more down. Here. David Smith had done a whole series of sculptures in the early 60s that had wheels on them, which I really loved. And
Mm,
that's what drew me to this. And then of course, but I'm assuming this no longer exists.
it doesn't exist, but it's
Right.
easily made. I
Right,
can
right,
make
right, right, right,
I,
right, right, right. Right.
I'd be happy to make this again.
Right.
And
I
this,
just absolutely love this.
yeah, this piece is called a drawing for Rick Owens.
Right.
Um, I'm kind of fascinated with Rick Owens as a designer, a clothes designer. He's also got like these models that are like really skinny and monstrous. There's something sort of monstrous about him that I kind of really think is very like dated in 90s, but super contemporary. I just
Right.
find him really a really interesting guy. And I saw this branch and it was right after I had watched the runway show of his, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this thing. And the round objects, the wheels are off of these electric spools from
Uh-huh.
from Con Ed,
Right.
and they have all these sort of like utilitarian holes that already exist in them. And I found the holes, and I had the branch and the chain, and I was like, and with an incredible sense of urgency and really quickly, I like just made this construction. And I just like the idea of this branch being held down to these wheels, like being carted out or being like, I
Well,
think
I
of it
like the fact
almost
that
as
it
a
was so
parade.
symbolic. She was being paraded around,
Yeah,
and you didn't know whether she's paraded around because she's chained to the cart, whether she's, a victim or a queen. And
exactly.
and then of course the pun in my head was about Twiggy. But anyway, that's something completely no
Sure.
no one is getting that anyway.
Sure. Well,
Um,
models are, branches like twigs like that. So yeah.
right, exactly, exactly, exactly. Okay, well, look, this is, I think, the end of our the show and tell part. I would love to hear questions or comments, and I've learned, as always, from this conversation and discussion. I'd love to hear everybody else's opinions and questions.
Uh, I have a question. By the way, fantastic show of work. I love this work, James. Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
both for tonight. If you keep scrolling down, what I was fascinated by is the reuse of the shopping cart comes back in again multiple times. And I'm assuming it's the same mangled shopping cart, and suddenly it appears in a different installation. And I like that that
There, oh yeah, there
happens.
it is. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's another one further down where you bring it in again. So I was kind of fascinated to see it now in another context where you have these pieces on the wall. Uh, so I'm getting a bit of what you're talking about, like that it comes in and out of your work and you readdress it. And then when you get down to that one, just above that one, I'm also really loving this tire. Scroll back up one, the tire that is suspended
Yeah.
uh, in this space. And the question I have is, did you get a traditional sculptural education? Or do you do these other things, or do you makeshift and figure things out and balance? And I guess I'm trying to get a little bit at your method of working.
Yeah, I went to the School of Visual Arts. I graduated from there. Um, but yes, I weld. I When I got out of college, I was a a high I worked for a high-end art fabrication company that did a lot of the work for Sonnabend and Ruben Spangle and a lot of galleries that had like Ronald Jones and Ashley Bickerton, Nancy Dwyer fabricated for Tom Wesselman for years. Um, so I'm a high-end fabricator. I was
Oh, okay.
Joel Perlman's assistant for 10 years. So I know how to do all those things, but this piece in particular is a balance piece. And this is a remnant from a performance that I did. It's a video of me getting this tire to balance in this way. And um,
Hmm.
it was incredibly difficult to get this tire to balance like this. And, I had two pieces of bamboo and a mop, and I just figured out this way how to get it. And the tire
Yeah.
marks on the wall are from the tire falling so many times and like
Huh.
rolling and hitting the wall. And I was
Amazing.
like, and once I saw that, I was like, oh, this piece is great. And then I thought to myself, oh, I can't wait to do a whole, gallery wall drawing with a dirty tire. I'll just go in there and bounce this tire against the wall. And like, so that's like kind of something that I have written down and inventorized in my memory. If ever given the opportunity, you know, I'll go into a space with a dirty tire and just do wall markings, and then maybe do like, something on the floor, or even hang a photograph or a painting on the wall with the marks, just to keep layering. I like the idea of layering sort of these ideas and doing this stuff. But this was like, I was filthy when I got done doing this piece, and I have the video of it, which is,
Right.
the
Was
performance.
the tire disintegrating when you're saying
Yeah. Yeah, the
yeah.
tire is like the rubber of the tire is as old as that rim looks.
Yeah,
So
because that's what
really,
happens to these things. Yeah, it's fascinating when rubber deteriorates.
oh, it just
And
gets dusty. Yeah, it just gets dusty and greasy, and they're awful.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
petroleum, it's oil, so
Yeah, I've worked with some rubber and stuff, and it is interesting. I did thin rubber sheets, and they started breaking apart and cracking, and it's just
yeah.
it doesn't last.
No,
Uh,
it doesn't have longevity.
yeah, what was the performance? You're saying this was part of a performance?
The performance is getting the tire to be hover in the air.
Oh, okay. Okay, I misunderstood. All right.
And it's in the corner. It's me also thinking about Sarah's lead pieces, throwing lead in the corner, and
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah. Interesting. Anyway, great batch of work. There are many of them. I would have many questions, but I can let somebody else if they want to jump in. Uh, because I'm just fascinating. It's wonderful work. Wonderful. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Anyone else with questions, comments, observations? Nothing.
Well,
Okay.
I would say that I was kind of trying to figure out how he would integrate the painting, uh, let's call it the figurative sort of painting, more with the other work, which is much more conceptual. Um, I would love to see that happen going forward in some way.
Yeah,
Otherwise it seems like a whole different thought process from this work, for example.
it is. It's very different, but I think they're going to come together somehow in the future.
Uh-huh.
I don't think necessarily a direct match from, like, let's say this piece we're looking at to like one of the paintings, but there is
Yeah,
a there is a
but those
connection there.
paintings, the paintings on paper, the one that I like so much, which I described, what you talked about as the wind, and the ones with the kind of tattoo imagery with the wood the crosses over them. I mean, I think there are moments where there is this, where it does come together,
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
and it's not just pure painting, but it's a combination of things, which is what I find intriguing about your work, is that you bring these various parts together, and they work.
the
I mean,
paintings would also.
even the suggestion here with this tire piece, because you've got, the quote unquote imagery painting on the wall because of the tire's disintegration. I mean, it is another pictorial element,
But also maybe the paintings work by not necessarily being hung on the wall, but maybe there's a stack just in the corner that
possibly.
the
Yeah.
viewer could flip through.
Right.
So they're
Right.
not hung up like,
Right.
traditionally displayed. They're just in the
Right.
room.
Right.
Well, you're kind of doing that. I mean, even if you keep scrolling down, there's another piece. I can't call them by names, but the you have one where you have a painting as this. It becomes an object because you're placing it with two other objects. The way that you're placing very specifically the dimensional stuff,
Hmm.
dimensional works with the painting, they're integrating. I remember when I first started, I have my MFA in painting, and then I immediately started attaching things to the paintings way back in the 1990s. And I, at that time, was really looking a lot at Elizabeth Murray's work and how she was building these dimensional things in space. And then even strangely enough, Jennifer Bartlett had done this thing where she placed a house, a miniature house and a boat, and it was in relation to the painting. So there is this dialogue that's going on between the 2D and 3D uh, constantly. And when you're showing it in a space, the works all feel related to me. So I don't know. You're kind of already you're doing it in my mind. You're placing the paintings just in vicinity of gives them a dialogue between each other because you're talking about in many cases are you showing multiple pieces in a show uh, so that somebody's getting a sense of it. There's one of the images here again, I don't know the name, but you have these paintings on the craft paper, and then there's a sculpture that's near it, and it looks like it's almost like you're painting the sculpture. Something
Right.
about the sculpture
Right.
and
Exactly. Yeah.
they go together. Uh, I should share my screen and show you what I'm talking about, but I think you're already doing it in my mind.
Yeah. I think it's sort of like a lung. It's like it breathes. Sometimes it comes in and sometimes it goes out and then comes back in. And the work is always breathing. Sometimes it's very separate.
Yeah.
And then when I get enough distance from the work, I can sort of treat it with less ceremony and be like, now I can just take a painting and just, you know, put it on the floor, even as opposed to like seeing it on the wall. Now I can treat it as like,
Yeah.
as an object that I can be like, oh, just because it's a painting doesn't mean that it's not a sculpture. It's like now I can just put it in a room, lean it against maybe it leans against the wall over here and there's like an object in front of it. And that's okay. It's
Exactly.
like, it's
Yeah.
more irreverence. It's like the more irreverence and the more liberation and freedom that I get as a, just sort of as an expressionist, it's like the better, and the less attachment I have to the way the object is supposed to perform, the freer I become. And then it's like, it just makes everything so much better for me, because then it becomes endless. You know, I'm not beholden to anything like painting, sculpture. I'm not beholden to materials or paint or anything.
Yeah, it's just the work feeds on itself in a strange sort of way too. Because I'm doing sort of the similar thing. I have like some old paintings that are very abstract sort of grounds, and I start thinking, wow, these would look interesting on the floor, and they would look interesting with objects on top of them. I mean, you're already doing that. That's what's going on. I can see it. It's it's interesting. I just saw a Giacometti show uh, at the I'm these days I'm down in St. Petersburg, Florida, and at the Dali Museum they had Giacometti juxtaposed to Dali at the it's always interesting when they bring in artists. That's the way that they do it. They'll have an exhibition. And one of the things that I was always in love with is that sculptors make these drawings that are so deep and thick with marks. And Giacometti's paintings were incredible. It's like almost more incredible than his sculptures because of the just the buildup of the marks. It was like he was trying to make the painting dimensional. And it's interesting to see those things going on when you suddenly see a show of many of his works, and also his early work versus his later work, and the early work being so traditional, looking like it could have been a Brancusi or some much more traditional work, and then he just breaks out. So for whatever that's worth.
No, it's great. Giacometti's drawings are great. His paintings are great.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. May I? Thank you. This is fascinating. Thank you very much. Did Michael Klein, did you mention having a gallery in the Catskills?
Well, my plan when I originally bought this house, there's a separate wing which I was going to call the Little Gallery, and we did one show, and afterwards I decided that it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it. It's now become my sort of office library, and no, it didn't work out as I had hoped.
I had the same experience. I was just curious. Yeah.
Yeah, right, right. Any other questions? Doug, have we used up the hour?
Well, I think that you've done nobly, and it's probably time to thank you and
Well, it's been very nice
thank our
you know,
audience.
what I
Yeah.
like about this is learning more, always, that you go
Hmm.
in with one idea and you walk away with more ideas and more. Now, of course, I want to have a long conversation with James because I have a whole bunch of new ideas that I'd like to discuss with him.
Uh-huh.
And that's I think one of the great purposes of these conversations. Well, all right. So I thank everybody. Have a pleasant evening. Welcome to spring, and I will see you next Monday.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Michael,
Thank
and
Thank
you
you
thank
very
you,
again.
much.
James.
Thank you all.
Thank you, James, as always. Thank you.
Please
Thank you.
join us next Monday, April 27th at 7 p.m. Eastern for another dialogue between Michael Klein and Bean Finneran. And thank you again, James and Michael, and also thank you to
Our
our
pleasure.
board members and our volunteers, and good night.
Good night. Thank you
Thank
all. Have a
you.
pleasant evening. Good night.
Thank you. Are
Good
you
night.
on Instagram, James? Can I find you there? Oh,
I think he jumped off, but yes, James has
yes.
Instagram. It's let me just find it. I just had it 'cause that's where I was pulling up all the it's James T. Greco.
Okay.
Um,
I'll go find him.
He's also
Interesting,
featured on
interesting work.
the Instagram account, the ATOA Instagram account. He's tagged.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mhm.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you so
That's
much.
wonderful. Okay. All right. Bye.
Bye.